start by saying that you're welcome to continue eating and drinking. We're not uptight around here. So please, none of us is going to be offended by the sound of chewing. We recognize that in some cultures it's compliment to chew loudly, so we're not going to be uptight about that. Yeah. And we do have sound editors who can take that stuff out later. If they have to. Welcome dear audience. Welcome dear audience. My name is Mohammed Lawanna. I am Director of Public Art St. Paul. And you are joining us for the fourth and final critical conversation of 2025 put on by our organization, Public Art St. Paul. The title of this particular gathering, this chit-chat, is Stewarding Our Earth for the Seventh Generation. This critical conversation series mentioned, which tonight's event concludes, is meant to inform and shape the Wakpa Triennial Art Festival upcoming next year in 2026. In case you don't know who we are, Public Art St. Paul is, as its title suggests, an organization that since 1987 has contributed to the development of public art by consulting the city of St. Paul on its systematic integration of public art in its construction development projects. What a mouthful. Beside this purpose, the purpose for which we were created, we work in two other main areas. One of these is to organize and stage the mentioned Wakpa Triennial Festival, which is taking place in summer of 2026 in downtown St. Paul and by the river over the period of 7 weeks. And the second thing we do is to steward the sculptures, about 20 of them, in a place called Western Sculpture Park, near the Capitol on Marion Street, sort of opposite the highway from the Minnesota History Center. And in that park, we also activate its offerings, especially for youth arts programming, particularly in a program that we've put on for about 15 years called Earth Lab, which is running at present. And this is not requiring prior registration. It's cost-free. It features a splendid variety of 8 arts workshops for youth. It takes place on Tuesdays from 1:30 to 4 until the beginning of August. If you'd like to talk to me or one of my colleagues about this sort of Tuesday camp, we'd be happy to chat with you about it after the panel discussion tonight. Or you can sign up for our e-blast or connect to us on Facebook and Instagram and learn more. Beside Earth Lab, you'll hear about our other programming. There are opportunities that come up, employment, internships, also commissions, potentially art commissions, and surveys of development projects that the city of St. Paul is undertaking, asking for popular input about what should go in there in terms of art. Those are the things we put out in our notices, typically. Tonight's event is conceived to invite, with restricted intervention, I would say, a discussion by 3 bright local indigenous youth about the state of their worlds and about stewardship as they see it of our earth. I say restricted intervention because although Public Art St. Paul shaped the conditions of this gathering, and even though Wakpa Festival curators, Angela Two Stars and Robert Cozzolino over there, came up with the theme for tonight's gathering and located the panelists. It is the panelists' responses to a meeting that we had earlier where we asked open questions about the state of their worlds and how they thought of stewardship. It was their responses that shaped the talking points. They're more like touchstones that our panelists are going to visit and perhaps return to during tonight's discussion. Unlike the previous 3 critical conversations, tonight's conversation is not moderated. by anybody. So they will take it away and run with it for about an hour, and then afterwards we'll have a Q&A, and then once the Q&A is done, if we've got any burritos left, you can take them home with you. Otherwise, you can talk to us about our programming and chat us up otherwise. Lovely having you. I'd like to next introduce our panelists with great privilege. Let me start with Charlie Ernst. Is a native of the Twin Cities, born and raised in Longfellow neighborhood of Minneapolis on the ancestral homeland of the Dakota people. A person who stutters, Charlie began his education at the Friends School of Minnesota, where the close-knit environment fostered strong personal connections with both classmates and teachers. From there, he made a significant transition to Como Park Senior High, a large public school where he quickly became an active participant in performing arts community. Charlie sings baritone in the school choir, plays percussion in the band, and has taken on various roles in theater productions. Deeply passionate about the natural world, Charlie plans to pursue a double major in environmental studies and environmental engineering at the University of Minnesota. He currently lives near Roseville with his dog, 2 cats, and a foster kitten. In his free time, he enjoys kayaking and tabletop gaming at his family's cabin in Wisconsin. Kalei Ganser, she, her, hers. Kalei Ana Cruz Martinez, Rania Ganser, is Kanaka Maoli and Chamorro from the Romeo and JJ clans of Guam. This past May, she graduated with her BFA as a self-constructed museums studies major and anthropology minor. Kalei's work focuses on museums as accessible public forms of education and places of healing. As an artist, she takes a humorous approach on the subjects of decolonization, identity, institutional harm, and growing up as a mixed indigenous woman. And third, last but certainly not least, Maya Sardon Garrity. She, her, is a recent graduate of De La Salle High School and the alumna of the Friends School of Minnesota. This fall, she will begin her studies in the honors program at the University of Portland, where she plans to major in biology with the goal of attending medical school. During high school, Maya was actively involved in a range of extracurriculars, including science club, volleyball, and ultimate frisbee, though a recent ACL injury has temporarily put her on crutches. She also volunteered with Healthcare for the Homeless, a Hennepin County initiative dedicated to supporting underserved communities. Maya values open dialogue about the future, hear, hear, both the difficult and the hopeful conversation, and is eager to contribute to those discussions. A creative at heart, she enjoys expressing herself through art, and has always had a special fondness for others. Please join me in lending a warm welcome to our 3 panelists.
Well, to start with, one of the things that we talked about when we got together was this basic idea that Angela and I have been discussing individually, in our sort of family lives with friends, but also together, is this idea that we're really concerned about, we want to hear what young people think about the state of the world and the kinds of things that you think about and would value working together on now, so that our generation and the generation in front of us isn't leaving you with this mess. What can we do together? What kind of collaborative things? And what is really front of your mind? What are the things that you're most concerned about? I know all of you have really thoughtful responses to that and have examples where you've already been working on this and thinking about this. So those are some of the big questions. Angela, did you want to add anything to that?
I think I thought it was really important to hear from people that are, younger. I don't think they get enough space to be able to speak their minds, and I've always been so enlightened when hearing from young people. Like they're so self-aware and mature and thoughtful in their responses, and they just like know who they are and what their goals are, and I'm so inspired by it. And I don't feel we give even 10-year-old children space to know who they are and what they believe and what they're passionate about. And so I wanted to give that space where we just step out of it because we act like we know it all because we're the grown-ups, and instead like just give it to you guys to say like this is what is exciting for you, this is what you're looking forward to as you're launching into adulthood, like what challenges you're facing, what's exciting about it, like how it's changed for you than how it was for us, because we grew up without the internet. What's that like? Rotary phones.
Yeah, in every generation, even if we're all alive at the same time, we're hitting certain things that are happening in culture with different we're coming to it with different experiences. We're always doing that anyway. But how, from our vantage point, Angela's vantage point and mine, and Mahana's, for instance, looking at the state of the world and thinking about where we in our lives is totally different than where you are. And so we really, like Angela said, value hearing about that. But also intergenerational collaboration is going to be essential for this. So that's another one of those things.
Does that spark anything that you guys want to just start passionate to?
Yeah. Yes, this is working. Excellent. So I would say the question, what is wrong with the world, is very hard to answer because there's so much going on. And of course the issue with that is there's no panacea necessarily. There's no like be-all end-all solution to everything that's happening. But, oh, there it goes. I hit the button that said push and thought that I was supposed to turn the mic on, but I guess it turned it off. Okay, well, let me restart. Okay, so the question of what is wrong with the world is hard to answer because there's so much happening. So many individual things that any one of which would be a huge issue, but all told, all put together is hugely kind of nigh insurmountable in its own way. And there's no one solution to all of this. There's no thing that we can do, today or even in, 5 to 10 years that would solve all of these problems. But I would posit, not that it's necessarily like it's the key to fixing these, but to remember that all of these issues with racial, sexual, identity-based discrimination, climate disregard, governmental exploits of disadvantaged and underrepresented countries and populations. All of that is tied together in its own way, and you can't address one of those without ultimately addressing all of them. And I don't, like I said, I don't have any immediate solutions, and I would be curious to see if my co-panelists do, because if they do, that'd be great. I feel like a key to that is recognizing that there is no one problem that stands alone.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, you kind of hinted at, where I felt I was struggling to begin with this question. It's such a large thing of what's wrong with the world, and please, you tell us what to do. How do we save you? And we're just as clueless as you are. Angela, I thank you for kind of giving us points to jump off of with Bob's expansive question, but I find it difficult to agree that youth tend to know who they are. I feel like I barely knew who I was until my third year of college. Even now, I still don't know where I'm going, but I think that youth tend to feel a lot better in terms of exploring their emotions and understanding what they're passionate about. We briefly met through Zoom to kind of talk about where we would want to go with this discussion, and I try and get myself out of it now. I'm the oldest on this panel. I'm 22 years old, legally an adult, and it barely feels like it. But I still need to check myself out of being kind of jaded and dislocated from a lot of the things that are happening around me, just because even after 22 years, I feel like they've been happening all my life, because they have. And so I can't imagine living 30, 40, 50 years and all of those things are still going on. And I don't blame adults for being so disconnected from those issues and feeling the need to just push along their immediate family to kind of get through them. But I think one thing that you should really value from the youth, not only listening to them, I think every generation can learn from each other, and I think one of the really valuable resources that the youth has is that they're new to this life, and so they're experiencing all of these really heavy, raw emotions new. And that's something that we all need to be reminded of, is that passion and fear and scarcity of the environment around us that we've lived however many years taking for granted, slowly and slowly.
Yeah, I definitely, just to add on to that point kind of, I think I've had discussions with peers and classmates just about feeling really overwhelmed, because everything is new and it's hard to come into this world knowing about all these problems and trying to experience everything as well as interpret it for yourself. So I think that the new perspective does have a lot to offer, but at the same time it's not the youth's responsibility, I know one of you said. It's been kind of hard. I know a lot of people experience this, keeping up with news, just because it's really overwhelming and scary, and I know I'm not the most well-informed person right now. Sometimes it's just easier to just go along with my life when I don't feel like some of these big things that are happening really affect me. So I definitely, I don't know, I think a lot of younger people, maybe our age, kind of high school, it's just really, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm that involved, just because, especially with social media and all of these news outlets that are there for me at any time, it's very overwhelming to have all of that not really being pushed on me, but just all that noise around.
Yeah. For me, youth has been a tale of me essentially learning how just extremely messed up our world is. When we're born, we aren't intrinsically aware of how horrible things are. We look around us and we only see beautiful things. We look at that wall and we're like, man, that's a fantastic wall. That's the best wall that I've ever seen, because that's the only wall that we've ever seen. And that sense of childlike wonder, I think we're taught to disregard increasingly as our life goes on. And now, I mean, me being the age that I'm at, I'm the youngest panelist in this group, and I can feel that sense of childlike wonder sort of struggling to hold on. And I think that speaks again to the collaboration piece that everyone has talked about, where I think that there is a certain power in that childlike wonder, but that alone is not going to be what's going to bring about world peace. There needs to be a piece of that, and I think that's why youth involvement is so important. But we can't do it alone. If you rely on us to fix all of your problems, we will probably not. And so as much as I believe that it is very wise for youth to have more of a voice, I don't think that by any means implies that we should have all of the voice. I think everyone in this room and in this world has their own unique things to contribute to this fight. And for some of them, it will be that childlike wonder. For others, it will be, their 60 plus years of experience. And all of those things are going to be equally important and helpful in their own ways.
Maya, Charlie, I wanted to ask, I was actually thinking about this earlier, because I was going back towards your meeting where we brought up social media. And both of you now have talked about this idea of feeling overwhelmed, where we're getting so much of this information so quickly. The world feels like it's crumbling around us. And I remember peak of my high school years, it was 2020. My entire TikTok feed was flooded with George Floyd protests, ways to protest safely, both out in the streets and at home. I remember, and my mom would let me go out into Atlanta and do protests on the street, and so I secretly downloaded, I doubt you guys will know what this is, but it's Parler, and it's a right-wing social media account, and I made a secret account where at my wise old age of 16, I was bullying conservatism. And as I was getting older and quarantine wasn't ending and I got bored bullying people online, and I was doing more in-person protests and doing more activism, I felt that overwhelming sensation really take hold in a way that it never has. And I'm wondering if you guys are finding yourselves or friends kind of falling into this. Are your social media pages being flooded with a lot of current protests like No Kings and those things? And do you see your half of our generation kind of really falling into that head over heels protest mindset?
I definitely, my community that not only I surround myself with, but my parents have surrounded me with is definitely in on that kind of. We have discussions, we participated in protests together, and I think that part of social media I found has kind of blinded me to kind of other things that are happening or other perspectives of people my age even, because even during the election, I remember I had kind of the wrong sense of what it was going to be. And I think, a lot of that had to do with my TikTok or whatever is a For You page, and there is an algorithm that I think it does kind of limit my perspectives to a bubble that is similar to mine. So I find that my communities that I choose to involve myself in and my friends are like-minded to me and will participate and protest and kind of stand up for those kinds of things, but there is a lot of people, I've even heard it, like I read an article about the younger Gen Z, like people just being a little bit like not what I thought they were, just because of my limited perspective. I mean, living in the city and going to a school that like everyone else had the same opinion as me, which I think that's been good with feeling, I know this was a question when we had our Zoom meeting, with feeling like good about my generation and feeling happy and hopeful. But at the same time, I think it has given me a little bit of an unrealistic view of like other perspectives. So yeah, I think social media has definitely played a role in that for me.
What would you say were your expectations of our generation compared to as they actually are?
I thought, well, I think a lot of our generation is kind of like younger people are more left-leaning, but I mean, there's a lot of different factors that affected this election, but I just had a different perception of the way it would go based on the people that I've talked to.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I just read an article, I think it is like there's a little bit of a shift with the younger Gen Z people that I just didn't know in my personal life, and then kind of have had to figure that out with like the big things that are happening.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've read a lot about, the idea of the algorithm, the online powers that be that tell the user a very specific story of how things are. And I heard that a lot more in regards to social media. However, I can actually speak this from experience because under the guidance of my parents and of just my own personal knowledge, I actually did not install a social media app until like last year when it got to the point where phone numbers are now like no longer constantly reliable, so you kind of have to have some sort of social media platform to like get in touch with people. But that aside, even before that, I mean, just the things that I would see when I was just housing the web would always give me a certain tailored idea of, and a very narrow and how I see completely wrong idea of how things are. And I'm still trying to kind of determine for myself why that is, like why that is such a prevalent issue in our society, that we're being told a story, most of us are, that although technically true is not the whole story. I have some concepts of I have concepts of a plan. Some that I feel like a part of it comes down to economical concerns of like, if we're told a very specific idea of how things are, it makes it a lot easier to then go in and purchase things that support that idea and kind of help drive that point home. I think there is a certain power that can be maintained in helping people, particularly young people, remain ignorant. I don't feel like that's the whole story, though. Do either of you have any just general ideas on why the algorithm is such a prevalent thing?
I was waiting for this conversation to reach capitalism. Charlie, I think you're very right. I mean, platforms like TikTok, Instagram, they're designed to keep us on longer. And so when we see people who think exactly like we do, we're gonna want to share and like and engage all of these new-fangled buzzwords. But I also find it so interesting when that algorithm bubble shifts a little bit, and you kind of see the other side of it, and it can be so terrifying in that way, where your bubble is suddenly burst, and you realize that all of these people who I don't know on the internet, I can't trust. And they're not all telling me the truth, and I have to make up my own decisions, and I have to find other news outlets that aren't under the desk news. That's probably too old for you guys. But yeah, also part of it is, like you said, Charlie, keeping us ignorant. When we think we have a whole army behind us, it's easier to be stagnant. It's easier to think that, well, other people will have my back, so I can sit this one out. And that's where numbers can dwindle. And it's where whatever other side that's spooking you just around the corner is kind of, I guess, going up against that. I wanted to talk about trending towards fascism in social media, because there have been a lot of recent, more like editorial studies and articles about like clean girl trends and trad wife trends and alpha beta male weird manosphere things, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people think has just like sprung up on us, but there have been so many little clues that have been strung together of this not just popping out of the woodwork. It's been something that's been slowly rising and have been swept under the rug as being like cute aesthetics for young girls to align themselves with, and places for young men to realize why their life is so terrible. And it can't be the government, it has to be women, you know? And I'm wondering if you're still seeing those sorts of trends boil up through your social media feed, or if it's hit a peak, or even is bursting through your real lives.
Yeah, one thing that I did want to say before I pass that on to you, because you know a lot more about what's actually happening on social media than I do, because I've had mine for a year. But you said, Kalei, that there have been signs of this for a long time, and I would say there have been signs of this since the foundation of this country. It's always been there. It's just needed the right impetus to propel itself into the public view. And that is happening, and that has happened many times, and it is happening again now.
Yeah. I think, wait, please repeat your question. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, just if you're seeing these sort of signs of fascism exit your For You page into your kind of real life, or if you've noticed some of those strings follow through and like the little hints of trends and whatnot into this sort of larger, scarier thing.
Yeah, I think, I mean, naturally, there's gotta be a lot of that. I think that, I don't know, I feel like I've kind of, I don't know if I've really seen it as much bleed into my life, but yeah, I don't really know. Like, do you have a response before me? I don't know.
Oh,
Or like, even not just from social media.
Yeah.
just, like-
well, the interesting thing for me that I've noticed in my friend group circles is that things like this, like these, trad wife and alpha male trends, seem to kind of start as an almost sort of sarcastic / mocking, like, oh, this is so funny, I'm gonna adopt that because I'm going to adopt it to make fun of it, essentially, or to kind of do some sort of complicated commentary on how stupid it is. But the interesting thing is then over time, the longer that persists in the public eye, particularly with youth, that can turn into just par for the course. It just turns into just what is in the youth society. And so now, like, I've seen a lot of my friends kind of go through a gray area, and I have to ask myself, at what point does it switch from being just like harmless fun, we are essentially making fun of this concept, to we are fully invested in this concept? Because it's happened. It seems to be a relatively repeatable pattern. I guess it has something to do with just the way that youth are, but it's concerning how often I see that trend take form.
Yeah, I guess kind of stemming from that same vein, and kind of meshing back into this idea of intergenerational collaboration. There's a big thing right now on TikTok especially, and it started from TikTok, of using fake words or words that sound like other words to talk about different topics. These might be the word grape, PDF file, unalived, things that were created to subvert the TikTok algorithm. Because at a certain point, when a lot of these political issues were being talked about on TikTok, people noticed that when they made videos about those topics, their views would drop. And they realized that the site was intentionally burying their videos so people wouldn't see them. And so these words that are stand-ins for other words took place. And I think it started with some older generations, I'd say younger Gen X, millennials, older Gen Z, kind of found that out and created this new vocabulary to talk about things under the algorithm's radar, but now has been adopted by younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha outside of TikTok to talk about these things. And I want to know your guys' opinions about how that kind of harms the younger generation's ability to discuss these topics, and what those sort of older generations can do besides like making fun of them for using these words in the real world, and call them into helping them understand why those words were created in the first place.
Yeah, just like the unseriousness, I think, that kind of brings to extremely serious and like very sensitive topics is definitely like what I think you're touching on. And although like in my personal circle, that's maybe not something that would like affect me or my friends, I can see how that is like just a way to normalize it as kind of like putting a filter on it, where it's like less shocking and less, I don't know, like doesn't have the true like energy that or respect that like those words would need. And going back to your other question, I don't know what I was thinking, but there is kind of this trend on TikTok, it's not really a trend, but there are like these podcasts where men like get together in a room and they talk basically like badly about women. And there was this creator, Andrew Tate, who probably maybe a lot of people have heard, who like was a terrible person. He would say terrible things about women in like his podcast, and basically these small clips would like go viral and stuff. And although like other people kind of poked fun at how ridiculous a lot of these men sounded, it still like kind of gave those words and those voices like a platform. And even though they did go viral, maybe a lot of the audience seeing that is people who, are making fun of them or think it's ridiculous and don't approve of it. That still was pushed and is definitely pushed to a lot of like probably younger men and even younger girls that would definitely negatively affect. So I think that's something, I don't know, it didn't really relate, but just something I thought of about how like the algorithm can be used to, especially with young impressionable people, used for harm.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with that, this is just kind of spontaneous interpretation of what of that concept, Maya, is that regardless of the reasons for which a video goes viral, it will still go viral, and in doing that, you're exposing hundreds of thousands of impressionable people to those horrible things, like you were saying, and that is the absolutely horrible thing about the algorithm. And to bring back what I think is going to be the hottest topic of tonight, the economy, I think a big reason why that is so prevalent and so horrible is that big social media platforms have managed to essentially modify the economy in such a way that very high-performing posts make the posters so much money. And so regardless of what you do to make some post go viral, whether that's, creating it using AI, or saying an extremely hot take about how women are horrible and that gets reposted 5,000 times, or you film your cat and everyone thinks that your cat's wonderful. That's gonna, for some reason, that's gonna make you a lot of money, and that almost encourages, I think, that kind of behavior of like, let's just be as insulting and misogynistic as possible so that we can get as much money as possible. And so essentially what we're doing is we're paying people for being sexists. And the fact that we've managed to maintain that over the centuries of this country's existence is just a horrible thing.
I'd go as far to say is we don't just pay people, we elect them.
Yes, yes we do.
And I guess this whole talk about social media kind of leads me to this question that I've been thinking about for a while, and I doubt the two of you will have a question or an answer for it, but I would love you to. But we've grown up with technology, we've grown up with social media at this point where we probably understand it more than all of the adults do. So we know it's harmful for us. we've seen these things, we know all of the anxiety it gives us, the depression, these overwhelming feelings, but we're not gonna let it be taken away from us. And so, our parents are right. Taking your phones away might have been a good idea. But how do we get around that? We know that social media is bad. We know it's rotting our minds. We know there's bullying happening. There's misinformation being spread. How can we educate adults into this sphere of knowledge that we've been born into and have them help us sort of break out of it?
That is the question, and that is what I've been asking myself. With my injury and surgery, especially this past week, I've noticed it a lot. I'm like always on my phone. Like there's nothing else I can do. I'm just sitting in my room on my phone. And like you were saying, like I know it's bad, and I know that I'm addicted, and it's hard to find a solution for that because it is like I just escape into it. And I know that like a lot of people experience that where it's like it feels good to just not be present almost, and like I can tell it's a waste of time and stuff like that, but it is nice to have an escape. So I don't know what alternatives there would be at this point, like everyone is addicted. But I've been trying to like put more effort into like connecting with people, and I don't know, right now I'm a very extreme case because there isn't much I can do, but every time I have a friend come over or I do an art project, like I know it makes me happier even if I'm not like doing something really. So I don't know, I've been trying to work on telling myself that and like holding myself accountable. And I don't think like taking away phones at this point would be the best solution, or like giving them later. That was a debacle with my little brother, just like when to give him it, especially when he's surrounded by that, and now our culture is so intertwined with like screens and having that kind of quick escape. So yeah, I don't know if there really is like a universal answer, but it's like it is an addiction, so it has to like come from yourself trying to stop, which I think like each person finding other things you enjoy, like when you're alone in your room, like deciding to read a book instead. It's like the choices that you have to make instead of just turning to the escape, even though it's really, really hard, especially since everyone is truly surrounded by it. Like everyone in our society is involved with that somehow. But yeah, I think it is up to each person, which makes it really hard. But
yeah, I think that's just about all that we as individuals can do, is to try our best to find those alternatives to screen usage. But the problem that I'm hearing, at least from you both, and which I would agree with, isn't necessarily that phones are inherently bad, but that our addiction to phones is the problem. And I would argue that addiction is something that is given to us by an outside source. I didn't seek this out necessarily. I didn't want for the kind of life where I was constantly drawn to my phone. But that was what I was given because it was presented as a very appealing thing. I didn't get a phone, and even then it was a really, really old phone, but I didn't get my personal phone until I believe it was 8th grade. And I remember all of the years, basically from 5th through 8th grade, I just felt so left out of everything. And I think that's one of the problems with phones is that they're presented as this kind of thing, you know, they're advertised as this kind of thing, which I think the key word, they're being advertised. It's presented as this kind of thing that will solve all your problems, and that's just as important to have as like a jacket. You know, it becomes a part of you because that's your connection to the outside world. And that idea is given to us by all of these big corporations that are talking about how awesome having a phone is. The best day of my life, well, one of the best days of my life was the day when I got my phone, because all of my friends were so happy that I had. And there were so many more things that I could do with it, and that was wonderful. But it was very easy to spiral into that addiction. And that wasn't caused because, like I said, I wasn't seeking it out. It was because the very nature of phones encourage that. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think it is possible for people to develop phones that give us all of the advantages of a cellular device, you know, being able to communicate with people, stay up to date on what's happening in the world. Essentially, that's about it. But without all of the added baggage, because I do believe it's all of the other stuff that leads to the addiction. I'm not personally addicted to texting people. I don't know if I'm a unique case or not, but that is not the case for me. The things on my phone that I am addicted to are things that I don't necessarily need, but are included in the package of a phone, I believe, for the sole purpose of encouraging that addiction, because like you were saying, Kalei, that's how you stay kind of locked into this sphere of participating, of engaging in things that you really probably shouldn't be engaging in, and purchasing things that you shouldn't be purchasing. That's what leads to the addiction. And that is something that does not need to be the case. I don't think.
I think you're completely right, and that I don't know if anyone else is. It was a micro trend, but the whole trend of dumb phones, where it's you, I don't know, lock your phone in a closet and get yourself a flip phone for like a week. But Charlie, to speak to your point of what a phone could be, you're right, it could have all those things, but it's not profitable. And that's what they need you for, is profit. And that's what our addiction does. It makes them money. And so the more your grandmother's addicted to Candy Crush, the more your little brother's talking about YouTube, the more, the wealthier the billionaires are getting. And there's, like we've been saying, it feels like there's nothing we can do about it because our entire worlds are in our pockets. If we decide to get a dumb phone, our friends are not going to call us because no one likes calling people anymore. They're not going to text you because it's going to take you forever to text back, not that you text back right away anyway. But it just leads us to this major thing of talking to people in person, which is terrifying. And I want to kind of get the perspective of both of you of what it's like, I guess, to talk to strangers. Because I feel like at 2020 we've sort of hit a point where you don't talk to anyone. If you weren't friends with them before, they don't exist to you. If someone comes up to you in the grocery store and asks you where something is, you're just going to give them this blank stare of, oh my god, this person's approaching me, and you don't hear their question in the slightest. Or maybe this is my own anxiety disorder. But I kind of want to know where you guys are with that, and if, like, you notice that with your peers and people around you, like, talking to new people is just weird.
Yes, definitely. I think also I am a more like introverted leaning person, and like it's not my favorite anyways, and I do know people who love talking to people, but I think generally it is something that social media and just like COVID even, I think COVID had a lot to play into like the ramping up of social media, but a lot of that has an effect on me and other people I know. Like I didn't have COVID during the most like formative years of my life. I was in 7th and 8th grade, so still that was definitely a key time for like learning how to be a person in this world. But yeah, I don't know, social media and just, I think a lot of people, not even just me, like there is a lot of bullying on social media, and that definitely contributes to, or like just being behind a screen contributes to people feeling like they can do that. And maybe that has also contributed to people being more scared in person because you don't want those kind of interactions in person. So, I don't know, a lot of times, like you can even see it, you go on a TikTok and you open the comments and there's like hate comments that are really intense. And maybe those people are just literally sitting like in their rooms in the dark and would never even like speak to a person outside of that. And I think that does make it scary, and being in person just is more vulnerable than when you can hide behind a user 12345 and a like blank username or picture. So yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of factors in, I think, like that for me and other people of our age, like COVID and social media, but I definitely have noticed that.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, I'm kind of a unique case, being as I am a person who's, talking to people is not my strong suit, just inherently. And I feel a lot of anxiety around that. I don't know if it's more than a fluent person would, because I'm not one. But personally, you know, when I'm like trying to call my bank or what have you, the very best thing that could happen to me is to receive an automated response where I can just hit numbers to make someone do what I want them to do. So again, hard to know how much of that is I've sort of ingrained from society and how much of that comes from my disability. But I don't think it is 100% to do with my disfluency. I think it is partially because it's so easy now to just go through the world without talking to people. And as much as I don't necessarily thrive off of talking with people, I do acknowledge that it is an important and wonderful thing to do on occasion. But I mean, certainly, yes, we are taught for our whole lives. I was sort of taught for my whole life that the average person does not like you. And so going through the world, I think a lot of this has to do with the way that I was educated, like the way that my society taught me. Like my baseline assumption of everyone is that they're going to be either turned away by or frustrated by Maya Sardon, and for risk of this turning into a everyone pity me time, I'm gonna keep this short, but it's that kind of mentality is, I think, absolutely taught to us. It's not the way that the world is, it's the way that we're told that it is.
Definitely. I guess I do want to bring this sort of out of the realm of social media. I know it's so much of our lives, but a lot of the people, especially why we're here today, is bringing in the older generations and letting them hear us. So how we've said we're scared of strangers. We've said that old people don't understand TikTok. So how do we get the help from the people who in this room want to hear us, but in the world where we think they don't want to hear them, how do we communicate with them?
Yeah, I think, like, I was talking about the bubble before, and I want to begin, like, challenging myself to expand that, not only to other perspectives, but, yeah, throughout all, like, just other, like, I don't know, like, opinions than mine, but just other perspectives in general. I definitely, it's harder, I feel like, in high school, when a lot of your learning and stuff is just limited to like your friends in the building that you go to every day. But I know I'm very excited for college and getting to, I know there's a lot more opportunities to just do things I'm passionate about and go out and like meet more people and more perspectives, and I'm excited about that. And then I found that at events where I can like put myself out there more, that's where I've had different connections where I wouldn't think they would be before. Like even something like this is fun to hear other people, even though I think we have a lot of the same perspectives, it's fun to, like share that with others. And even at like protests and other community events where there's just people of all ages and people of all backgrounds that's different from the people at my school, I think that has helped just expanding and trying to expand the people that I interact with. Because it is really, really easy to get caught in that bubble, I think, for everyone, like even adults, like at work, just going there and then going home to your family. So I don't know, events like this where there's collaboration, when people try to connect people of different backgrounds and beliefs, I think is where the solution starts. Just speaking and interacting with others, making the choice to put yourself out there.
Yeah. I think that awareness of and appreciation of diversity is huge, because so many of the problems in our society can kind of be traced back to this idea that we have this huddle of like the ideal person, the alpha male, if you will, that it seems like in a way we either need to choose to strive for or to actively refute, and that choice shouldn't need to be made, particularly because I'm so sorry, there's only one white male, cis, straight, blonde, jacked, sexually mature man, and that man is Fred from Scooby-Doo. Everyone else does not fit into that box. And so if you're not Fred, you shouldn't be trying to. But we're told that that's who we should be. We're told that is who's going who's going to do the best in this society. And the truth of the matter is that is not entirely wrong. I mean, of course, there have been so many studies done that prove that the more you fit into that box, the more successful you're going to be at like finding jobs and going to college and all the litany of things. So I think we need to find some way to break that down, or at least dismantle it and take a good hard look at how bad it is. I'd be curious to learn with you two what experiences you have had with that box, and how, if there are ways that we could work to dismantle it.
I think like community events is just one place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this of course, like the program that you guys do. Not to promote, but yeah, I think those kinds of things and efforts are really important. Even just like going to my block party for my block and just interacting with those kinds of people outside of my bubble is helpful. And yeah, just people who are willing to like see that it's important and just put effort into making community events and places where you can just connect with others, share a joke, or just a few words, like, is very helpful.
I completely agree. I think community is the key word here, and that's where a lot of this collaboration happens, and really kind of the only place it can start is when older people realize that they've been listening to each other a lot, and there are other people they feel they can learn from. And when they call in younger people and they greet themselves and have them meet other people in their community and kind of foster this safe space of learning where these younger people also feel like they can be learned from is super important. And Charlie, that sort of box that you're mentioning, it is really being fed to us constantly. And I think the fact that the only place we have to go is our phones. We don't have free third spaces. If we go to a park with some of our friends, there's the fear that there's a scary man that's lurking around, and all of these other things that we're told not to go outside for. If you go ride around on your skateboard, some old man's gonna yell at you. If you're talking too loud with your friends on a bus, some old man's gonna yell at you. If you wanna do sidewalk chalk art, some old man's gonna yell at you. And so I think really investing in your immediate community is where that starts, and that's where you'll build a bigger community, and that's where young people are going to thrive, that's where older people are going to thrive, and that's where we're all going to realize that we have a base with each other. That's where you can connect with strangers in a space that you still feel safe. And if an old man comes up yelling, you know that you're going to have a bunch of people next to you that can yell right back.
Dear panelists, forgive the intervention. AIC expects us to be out of here by 8, and I think there are a whole bunch of eager people waiting to ask you questions. Me first. I can demonstrate it. Here's what we're doing. We're coming to this mic here. Is this on? Try it now.
There we go.
There we are. All right. I remember when I was in my 20s being frustrated by what I perceived to be a systematic discrimination against young people. I remember feeling like I could tell you're dismissing me because you think I'm young. I remember learning about the average age of the US Supreme Court At the time, it was, at the moment, I think it's about 64. It was even older then. Well, then I learned that the average age of a U.S. University president is about 60. The average age of a CEO is about 59. The average age of the last 2 U.S. presidents is about 93 and a half. But more, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, the federal statute against age discrimination in employment, is only applicable to over 40. So it doesn't even qualify in cases of age discrimination against young people. Have you thought about this at all? That do you ever feel frustrated that your world might be run by people who are 3 times your age?
What a topical question. I absolutely do, and it's funny that you bring up this Employment Act, because I remember while applying for jobs, even before I graduated, my Instagram feed knew exactly what I was doing on my laptop, and it came up with a bunch of people who claim they work or have worked in HR and are telling you how to get around this age discrimination, like not putting the year that you graduated, and a bunch of how to apply for jobs who want at least 3 years of experience in an entry-level position. And it's people trying to give younger people, or even people who haven't had opportunities to work entry-level positions, apply for entry-level positions that require not entry-level requirements. And I think as I've gone through college, as someone transitioning from my late teens to early 20s, I've had to really wrestle with this thought that I've had in my head for a while, that I am just a burden to any older person, that I'm not as smart, I'm not as capable, I don't know as much, and so my opinion might not matter as much, and so they were totally right to be weirded out or frustrated if I got the answer to a question wrong, or if I wasn't understanding something immediately. Do you guys experience that same sort of discrimination?
I am not currently very active in the job market, so I can't speak to that as well. I do think that there is still, if not systemic discrimination against young people, I think systemic stereotyping of young people, that they're only capable of doing certain things. And I think that is, as all blanket stereotypes are, very harmful, because although there are some youth that would fall into that category, there are many that do not. And I think that that's a massive problem in the job market, that youth are inherently viewed as less capable in certain aspects than adults. I think, and this kind of harkens back to what I was saying before, to a point, yes, there are some things that youth cannot do as well as adults, namely financial management. And there are also certain things that adults don't do as well as youth, namely financial management. And so it, I think, really comes down to a person-by-person thing. But I also don't think that there should be this assumption that all old people are going to be inherently more capable of doing things. And that, the older the better is not entirely always true in all cases.
Yeah. I learned a little bit about like hard skills and soft skills, which are like, the hard skills are like, I don't know, like more of the facts, the training that you've done, and the soft skills are more like collaboration and things that you can't as much measure within like a degree and stuff. And like you were saying, I think that it does come down to like an individual level where maybe a younger person has a lot more to contribute to a team in order for them to like flow better, but an older person has more experience, so it should give them like priority or whatever. I think that definitely, just the way that like moving up in a corporate kind of works, supports that, but yeah. Also personally, I don't have that much experience like finding a serious job or anything like that, but I think that, yeah, it's undervalued how like a particular person could be better for something rather than like based on themselves rather than like their resume.
So, what's up, y'all? My name is Chewy, first of all. I think you guys, you mentioned conversation, just being able to talk to people. When I graduated in 2020, so like I'm considered young people still. But one thing for me that I noticed was, like a lot of people do say, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not able to be in contact with a lot of community, or I'm not able to have conversations with people, or even be able to have, like you said, third spaces. And I think that was, I guess it's a unique experience for me, considering like my career choice, being within entertainment. I'm a dancer and a filmmaker and photographer. So after COVID, that did stunt a lot of people. As a dancer, we still had what we call like ciphers or sessions. So we have dancers still meeting up to dance outside, right? And so we consistently have this space for us to express and create. And when a lot of people say like, hey, we don't have third spaces, or we don't have places for a community to meet up anymore, I think one, if you are, both of you are going to college soon, that's probably gonna be the most interactions you're gonna have for a long time, depending on what your career choice is. But because of just the way colleges are built, and it's meant for you to actually meet people all the time. But do you guys have any hobbies? Because I feel like that was one of the biggest things for me, and I think for a lot of other people, was just the fact of me having a hobby. And even if it was just like, hey, I enjoy crocheting, or I'm into fashion, there's fashion shows that happen all the time, or there's people who meet up just to crochet and meet up together. Like I think that was one of the easiest and biggest ways for people to build community, or even be able to have those third spaces that they're asking for, is literally to pick up a hobby. And so that's my question, is like, are any of you guys picking up any hobbies? Whether it's creating, I feel like most hobbies like are around creating. It may not always feel like artistic, but like even if it's like lifting, like you're creating like the body or whatever image is your health that you want, that's a form of creating. So is there any form of creation or hobbies that you're doing for yourselves that you feel like could bring you into third spaces or community?
Yeah, absolutely. I like you said, it was so much easier for me to be like finding those spaces when I was in college. I crochet, and so I would drop in on our crochet club every once in a while. I'm a big D&D fan, and that's a great third space activity of getting together with people and just kind of letting your imaginations run wild. But now that I'm graduated and it's more difficult to find those spaces, I have been forced to look online. That's where you find out where people are meeting, and if you, I've had this issue because I desperately want to get back into playing D&D again, but finding a D&D group online is just a terrifying notion to me. I'm just probably dropping into someone's house where all these people already know each other, and I'm a younger brown woman just wandering into a random space I've never been before, and that just screams danger to me. And so I think definitely advice for the two of you is finding those people who ground you in those hobbies and interests in college, and if you end up going back to the same place, they're your branching off point. That's your community at that point, and that's how you let your community grow, is fostering each other's interests and going out and talking to strangers. And really finding those people that you connect with and creating those spaces on your own. Yeah, thank you for your question.
Yeah, that has been huge for me. In high school to have, so many more opportunities than I did in K through 8, and my extremely small school where there were like 12 people per grade, to be able to cultivate more of those interests. I spoke to a lot of this in my intro, or my biography, but I do a lot of performing arts work via my school. I'm a percussionist in my band and a baritone in my choir. I actually ran a D&D group until last Tuesday when we stopped because people got way too busy. And also, the idea of finding a new group is incredibly daunting.
Yeah.
So I can certainly support you with that. But just, there's so many opportunities to find people that you can feel comfortable with, that you can develop genuine relationships with through hobbies. And so, yes, wonderful question. That's guided a lot of my social growth over the past 5 to 6 years.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I can go off of that. I've found a lot of, I've kind of reached my branches far with all the different things that I've done, and I've found a lot of joy in that. I participated in some sports, volleyball, and then ultimate frisbee was with a different school than mine, so I got a whole new group of people with that. So I found a lot of joy in not only moving my body, being active, having goals to reach, but with the people that I've met through that. So I think that it is so important to find those things that bring you joy and passion that are extra things rather than something with a job or school that you are supposed to or have to do. So yeah, I really relate to that, where I've just found a lot of deeper meaning and deeper relationships in those things that I'm doing for myself and I choose to do and make me happy.
Full transparency, I'm Charlie's dad, so he was not coached for this question. And I want to thank you guys for being here. It's been great to be able to hear you talk. If I'm going to ask you to pick one, if you can, of the principles, ideologies, constructs, any ism or ist that you see as being the most destructive to our society.
My pick is capitalism. It breeds a lot of hunger for power, which will draw in racism, sexism, gender exclusivity, ableism, to keep the truly wealthy on top. The easiest way to keep people under you is to keep them poor. And that the lack of wealth destroys people. It drives people out of community, it drives people into harm, mental harm, addiction, just it ruins lives and it breaks people apart. And that's the country that we've been born into, is to praise and seek after money. Even while we were up here talking about the algorithm, we know it lives and breathes on profit. We know making the youth separated and kind of limiting their trust in news sources, that's also based on profit. It's unfortunate that however spiritual you want to be, I mean, first communities were worship grounds. And now with certain worship centers, a lot of them also bring in profit that they don't need to have taxed. And so we found that a lot of our values, base needs of life, centers for happiness, have been turned to something that are now advertised and sold.
Yeah. Dad, I wish that I could give you a very long and eloquent response to that, but Kalei, you said exactly what I was going to say, so I really have no more to add. That's totally fine. Every single talk that I've had with anyone about some pertinent global issue has ultimately come down to capitalism. It is the cause of, I would say, everything. And there's a part of me that wants to start a podcast, although I think there are enough male-run podcasts out there, of just people coming and saying, here's a pertinent global problem, and me telling them how that relates to capitalism. So I'm so glad that came up, so glad that we are in alignment on that. It's a huge systemic global issue that I think undercuts almost everything.
I'm gonna have to agree with that. I mean, clearly, as we talked before, all of these issues are very intertwined, and I think it's kind of the umbrella that pushes everything to be worse. And it's something that is scary because it's at the root of our country, and we are so influential because of it in the world. So, yeah, it's hard to think about moving forward when it's literally in every single thing. Even someone, I see the issues with it and I know the issues with it, but that's how I'm gonna have to live my life. I mean, unless I move off the grid and maybe grow my own food.
That could be.
But yeah, that might be an option. Oh.
Well, I appreciate your candidness and directness. I was just wondering, is it the capitalism or is it the greed that maybe capitalism breeds? And is there a way to have capitalism without greed? And what do you think about philanthropy?
Philanthropies, I think, can be pretty chill. I tend to work with a lot of arts programs who rely on philanthropy. This idea of having a capitalist system that perhaps doesn't rely on greed is such a foreign concept to me. I feel like you're right. I do believe greed came first, but capitalism is the ugly monster that it's created, and it's now I think they go hand in hand. I don't know if you guys can sort of think of anything else, but I think for so long I've seen so many issues of friends, family members, my immediate worldview stemming from capitalism that I even like trying to just hit at the greed of people, and I guess working to meld capitalism into something that can work for us doesn't seem feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think capitalism isn't inherently bad, but it is when it's run by humans. Capitalism is, as you so eloquently said, it's the product of our inherent greed that, I don't think is inherent to humankind. I think all species have an inherent desire to have some sort of control over their surroundings. But I do think it would be possible to at least attempt to initiate a slightly less problematic capitalistic economy, but only insofar as it is on the road to what I believe is the ultimate goal, which would be socialism. I think that's the end point. Obviously, of course, we can't switch to a socialistic based economy right now, but the road to that would necessitate creating a less competitive market economy and a more philanthropic society where the healthy have the prerogative to support the poor rather than amassing more wealth for themselves. So I think it is possible in a vacuum to have a capitalistic economy that is good, but I think our society is not capable of maintaining that for a long period of time.
Yeah, I know we're almost out of time, but it's clear that it is a cycle that will just continue and continue and continue, and like the richest will get richer, and I think, there isn't really like a solution for that unless a lot of people band together and make big change, which right now it's not looking like it's going in that direction. But I don't know. There's a lot to say about capitalism, but I know we're kind of out of time.
Well, on that critical note, we conclude our critical conversation series for 2025. I'd like to thank the Minnesota Humanities Center for generously funding this series in its entirety. I'd like to thank the Minneapolis Indian American Center for hosting us for the second time during this conversation series. I'd like to thank our erudite WACPA curators for conceiving of and finding the panelists for all four conversations during this series. Last but not least, I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists, Kalei, and Maya, for their insights. Keep in touch, follow us online. We'll see you again sometime soon, we hope. Good night.